Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at a wildly chaotic and honestly sharply contrasting weekend over in the Middle East. It's this fascinating, incredibly complex tale of two entirely different tracks playing out at the exact same time. You've got one defined by military action and the other by the stroke of a pen. Okay, let's dive into this.
So, here's our roadmap for untangling this complex web of events today. First, a weekend of contrasts. Second, the broken U.S.-Iran ceasefire. Third, escalating rhetoric and retaliation. Fourth, Israel and Lebanon's breakthrough. And finally, the future of peace talks. And don't worry, we are going to methodically separate the military escalation from the diplomatic breakthroughs so it all makes sense.
All right, Section 1, a weekend of contrasts. Let's set the stage for how two drastically different geopolitical narratives unfolded simultaneously.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer duality of the situation. On one hand, we're witnessing a violent breakdown of a ceasefire between the United States and Iran, a very clear path of escalation. But literally at the exact same time, we're seeing the signing of a major peace framework between Israel and Lebanon. It's like two parallel tracks moving in completely opposite directions.
Moving to Section 2. The broken U.S.-Iran ceasefire. We're going to shift our focus entirely to that first track now and detail exactly how these military actions played out.
Let's walk through this chronologically, step by step. So, just in previous weeks, a memorandum of understanding was actively keeping the peace. It was holding. But then, this weekend, the IRGC attacked an oil tanker. In rapid response, the U.S. struck Iran overnight, and then in the following hours, Iran launched attacks against Kuwait and Bahrain. It was this rapid, tit-for-tat chain of events that just completely shattered the Memorandum of Understanding.
Now you might be wondering, what sparked this? Well, the catalyst for the renewed U.S. response was a highly specific action. According to reports, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, attacked another oil tanker located right in the strategic Strait of Hormuz. That incident was the immediate trigger for everything that went down overnight.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the precise nature of the Iranian military infrastructure that U.S. Central Command targeted. They went directly after surveillance infrastructure, communication systems, air defense sites, drone storage facilities, and mine-laying capabilities. This cleanly breaks down how U.S. aircraft sought to degrade very specific operational capacities following that tanker attack.
Okay, Section 3. Escalating rhetoric and retaliation. Let's look at the strong political statements and further retaliatory actions that immediately followed those strikes.
Following the overnight strikes, the president posted to Truth Social, citing that the strikes were specifically for violating the ceasefire agreement again. He went on to say, and I quote verbatim here, "It is very possible that they will never learn. There may come a point when we are no longer able to be reasonable and will be forced to militarily complete the job that we very successfully started. If that happens, the Islamic Republic of Iran will no longer exist."
Now, notice a crucial detail here. The number 2. This wasn't just an isolated incident. This was already the second exchange of fire between the United States and Iran over the course of just one single weekend. To put that into perspective, the sheer frequency of these exchanges highlights exactly how rapidly the situation deteriorated.
And the retaliation didn't stop there. In direct response to the U.S. airstrikes, Iran launched missiles and drones toward Kuwait and Bahrain. Over the weekend, Vice President J.D. Vance also weighed in on X, posting, "Iran signed a ceasefire agreement, we have honored it. If they have disagreements about how the MOU is being applied, they can pick up the phone, but violence will be met with violence." It's a statement asserting that the U.S. honored the agreement and emphasizing that disputes really should be handled diplomatically by picking up the phone rather than through force.
All right, moving to Section 4, Israel and Lebanon's breakthrough. We're going to shift gears entirely now, moving away from the U.S.-Iran conflict to look at the parallel diplomatic track happening between Israel and Lebanon. But before we look at the breakthrough itself, it's absolutely crucial to understand the context on the ground. This diplomatic progress is happening in spite of ongoing lethal military clashes. Just late last week, as Hezbollah continued attacks against Israeli forces in southern Lebanon, at least one Israeli soldier was killed. The Israelis also launched new strikes against Hezbollah this weekend. So the environment is still actively hostile, which makes this diplomatic progress incredibly significant.
Let's move to and see how this builds out of all that hostility. We see a structured, step-by-step path taking shape toward regional peace. Step 1. Intense talks took place in Washington. Step 2, those talks actually culminated in the signing of a framework agreement. And Step 3, the ultimate goals of this framework are normalizing ties between the two countries and disarming Hezbollah. It's a structured blueprint taking shape right in the middle of an ongoing conflict.
To quote directly from the source on this breakthrough, these were intense talks, difficult talks, but we arrived at an agreement, a framework agreement which will allow for the achievement of a full peace agreement between our two countries. I wanted to share that directly because it emphasizes that while the negotiations were extremely arduous, they yielded a genuine blueprint for full peace.
And that brings us to Section 5, the future of peace talks. Let's tie these two contrasting narrative tracks together to understand the broader regional impact.
So the crucial point is how these two incredibly different situations coexist. Look at the sheer divergence here. In Lebanon, the situation is slightly stabilizing thanks to a massive diplomatic effort and a new framework. But simultaneously, the future of U.S.-Iran relations is in serious jeopardy. You have stabilizing diplomacy directly contrasting with newly jeopardized relations.
Which leaves us with this massive, looming question. Will the technical talks that are actually scheduled between the United States and Iran move forward given the military strikes this weekend? How does military escalation